Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to continue from where we stopped. I think in the last class we we looked at the Flutter project structure, and then we did a bit of we looked into testing, right? Talked about the various testing types we have in Flutter, the unit testing, the widget testing, and of course integrated testing, right? Um, So hold on, let me correct this. So we talked about why testing was important. Oh, yeah, we talked about why testing was important. Can anybody just tell me one or two, why testing is important? Anybody, anybody, maybe on the chat. Anybody? Why is testing important?
Okay, sorry. It's Collins. I was raising my hand.
Okay, no
Um,
problem.
Testing is important in order to confirm and assert the correctness of your code, and that's automated testing. That's what I'm asking about.
Yeah, well, automated, manual, well, testing in general. Okay,
Okay,
well,
is
that's fine.
all right.
That actually works. So we focused more on unit testing yesterday. Sorry, the last class, and we'll try to round that up today. Um, and we talked about unit testing. Having to test functionalities, right? It checks your functions and the like. And we said there are many reasons for that. One of the reasons for unit testing, right, is that it helps us to identify bugs at an early stage, right? Helps us identify bugs at an early stage, and that can actually save, you're working for a company that can save you guys a lot of time and even money as well, right? I think another reason we mentioned was when we want to refactor our code, maybe we have introduced something and we want to kind of refactor our code. There's a tendency for us for things to break actually, right? But unit tests actually gives us a bit of confidence, right? And also we know that, okay, if something breaks, we know exactly, where it breaks and what is breaking it because we have already set tests in place. Um, yeah, so that's just to um, run that. Okay, so we did a bit of testing. We did some testing. So let's do testing time. We did a bit of stuff, right? Let me share my screen. Actually thought I was sharing that. Okay, so we did a bit of stuff in the last class. So testing time, let's test. Let's see what we actually did stuff. But today we're going to kind of get into much more interesting stuff. So in the last class, we actually tested the counter application, right? We ran tests to check that a count is incremented and it's one. We checked for decrement, right? We checked that a count is resets. I think they should be resets, right? And then the value is 0. And I think was okay. Yeah, we checked that the value of count is 1. Of course, when you create an instance, we learned about setup all. We learned about groups, right? How we can group our tests, right? We talked about tear down and tear down all. So today we're going to test. We're going to take the testing a bit much further, right? So I just created just because of time, right? Our main, let me just start with this. I have a user model. Let me just walk us through because of time, because I didn't want to start writing all this code in class. You guys are not beginners, so I don't have to start writing stuff like this in class. So we have a user model here, right? So we have an email, name, ID, website, right? So this is just our user model. We have this copy with, and then of course, we convert to map, and then from map, and then to JSON, and then from JSON. These are just basic stuff that you should have already worked with before now. And then we have a user repository. So where we are fetching, okay, so let me take this out, right? And let me see, let me just take it from the top, right? Okay. So okay, let me just so we'll run everything, but we have a user repository where basically what we are doing is we just want to get a user. By the way, actually this URL is valid, so you can test it. It will actually give you just one user, right? If without this one, it will give you all users. So it's something you can actually use to play around. So, but basically what we want to test is we want to test want to apply unit testing, but now we want to test a model, right? We want to test a model, and then want to also test repository, right? Some of all these actions, actions that have to do with you probably fetching data from the back end, and stuff. How can you also, kind of like test that? So we're going to actually implement that in today's class. Hopefully we'll actually do integrated tests. Hopefully, I can't actually I can't guarantee it per se, right? I can't really guarantee, but depends on the time frame. If we have enough time, we'll probably just, kind of go into we'll go into doing that if we have the time. So let's just a second. So okay, so this is what we have. So we have a user repository, right? That just gets a user, right? So I think I need to. So it just gets a user from this. So let me see if I can just open up let me bring a browser tab, right? So you guys can actually, see that. So let me just show you show you the results of opening this up. I'm sure you can see my screen. If at any point you can't, you just let me know. So this is just a placeholder. So it returns, this returns a user, right, with the ID of one. This is the raw JSON data, right? If I want all users, right, I'll just take out one, and then there are a lot of users. I think, okay, just 10. So this is just you can use this to help you, just test out fetching and all those stuff, right? You want to fetch data and play around with that, okay? So yeah, this is just to show you that this works. So let's take that out. So what we're doing is that we are getting, the user, and then we're passing it. So if the response, if we have a 200, status code response, so what we do is that we convert it from JSON, right? We already have this from JSON method here, right? I'll convert it, right? And then if the status code is not 200, right, it should throw an exception, right? Throw an exception for us, right? Okay, so that's that. I think the only other thing is in our main, right? In our main function, right? I'll update all this. We just get the users from the repository, right? And then we can call that. Okay, so this is just get user, right? So this will actually what's called the get user function, and then pass it here, and then we can use it to just build. This is basically just going to give us a list of users, right? So we'll check the connection state. If it is waiting, we just want to give a circular progress indicator. Else, we just need the snapshots of the You just need the data, right, of that user. Okay, so let's now apply unit testing to this, right? So first of all, we'll start by testing the user repository, right? We'll start by testing the user repository. So the first thing first, of course, like I said, since we want to test user repository, we can just right click on user repository and then click on go to tests. So this will create a test file for me in my so this will create a test file for me here. So I'm just going to close this out because we don't want to test widgets right now. Okay, we don't want to test widgets right now. Okay, so considering this type of application and the facts, because of course, when you're building stuff, whatever you're building an application such that you have, something like this, so right, you could have get user, you could have create user, you could have delete user, edit user, right? You could have a lot of methods here, right? And you could have other classes apart from the user repository, right? You could have other methods rather in this class. So considering that in creating this test, we're not just going to create a test. We'll first of all create a group, right? So I'm just going to create a group. I'm going to call it user repository, right? Okay, so yes, we have a group now so that we can, so this is just for the user repository class. Now, we now need to write a test. There are two things here. So we want to write a test for getting a user. We want to actually test that we're actually getting a user. Now, but looking at this, we need to check two conditions. First is that we are getting a status code of 200, right? Which if we get a status code of 200, we need to also test that we are returning the user, right? Of course, the second condition is if we are not getting a 200, right, it should actually throw an exception. Okay, so one thing about testing is you need to, first things first, the most important is identifying the conditions that you want to test, right? You have to identify the condition first. So now, knowing that we could also have, like I said earlier, have some other functions, right? I'm going to create another group, right? I'm going to create another group. Now, this group, I'm going to call it get user function, right? Meaning that the test I want to write is with respect to the get user function. Remember, if we have, let's say, create user, and I want to test that, I'll probably just create a group for that also. So yeah, let's continue. Okay, so let's add a semicolon here, right? Okay. So every test that's related to this get user function, we're going to just have it there. So let's now continue, right? So the first test we want to what we want to test first, right, is this guy, this young man, right? To be sure that okay, fine, our response is 200, and we are we're getting a user listen. So how do we do that? So I'm going to call my test. Now for description, so I'm going to give a very long description, and I'm going to use that to just reiterate the concept of assert, act, and expect. I'm going to give a very long description, but after that, I'm not going to do that again. So I'm going to say given user repository, right? Given user repository class, right? I could add a comma or just say when the function, not just any function, when the get user function is called and status code is 200, right? A user, or can just say then return a user model, right? So this is actually what we want to test, right? So like I said, it's going to be a long one, but I want to use that to just kind of reiterate this. So now looking at this, right, you can see that the very first thing here is giving the user repository what class. So we need to get that class, right, which forms part of our asserts, right? Sorry, where we say, excuse me, where we can say user repository, right? User repository equals user repository, right? So this is, so given this class, we need to get an instance of it, right? The act there, we now want to take an action. But now, from what we've known, knowing that we are using a group and everything, right? So let's just do it. Let's follow the best practice. Now, we need to make sure this user repository is available everywhere. So first of all, I'm just going to do a late user repository, right? And then we'll use our setup, right? Yes, setup. And so we'll create that instance here. So we'll set it up, right? So that we don't have to always set it up again. Okay, so this will just close out the assert, right? But I'm just going to leave that there. So this is basically that. Now, of course, the next thing we need to do is to act. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to act. Now, the action there, I'm just going to say final user equals, we need to await. Now, actually, I could just say user repository dot gets user, right? But the thing is, we need to await this. We need to await this because we actually need a value. So, and remember, it's a future. So if we are waiting this, I need to pass in an async. So I think, yeah, here. Right? So this is the action. And then now to the expect. So let's talk about the expect. Let me write the code and then, so this is it. We expect that the user should match something. So what do we want to match? We want it to match a user model, which we have a user model here. But if I use this, I'll have to start passing in an email. I have to give these things values, which I may not know the value because of course we are fetching this from the backend. Now, in as much as I think I showed you guys, I showed you this, right? I could actually, just for testing purposes, use one user. I could pass in this information, right? Of course, if I fetch this, I should get this. So I could pass in, where we have email, I'll pass in this email, sincere@April, and all those. I could do that. But, you get to cases where you don't even know what the data is, right? You can't start doing that. So, but we need a user model, right? We need a user model. But we can't actually call this user model class because, like I said, we'll have to now start passing values for each of these parameters, which we may not know. So because this is fetched from an external API, right? We can even fetch it from your database. So that's why we cannot do that. So, so there's a way to do that, right? So what we can do is to check that we are getting a user model. So what this will now become is that expect that this is this method type matcher, and then is a what will now pass in the type, which is what user. So check that it's a user, right? So that's actually what solves that. So let's test this, right? I'm going to run from here. So let's run this and let's see what we have. So okay, so that is running. So it's running this. So let me open up testing. Okay, so we can actually see our test has actually passed, right? Okay. So yeah, our test has passed, right? You can actually see that here. I don't know if I need to widen this, but this shows you that our test has what passed. Okay, yeah, so this is it. So you can see that this returns user repository equals this. Did I say equal? Okay, yeah. So your user repository equals the get user function given this when the class is this. So these are get user function what passes, right? So now let's now test for a situation where the status code is not it doesn't return 200. If it doesn't return 200, it means that that something happened somewhere, right? So permit me to just duplicate this, right? So given this is when it's code and the status code is not 200, what are we expecting in our test? Of course, if it's not 200, it should throw an exception, right? So our status code is not 200, then throw an exception, right? So it is still the same thing, right? But of course, this is how it should be. We have done our assert. We now find out, we get the user. We call the get user function. So what we expect is that the user is what? The user throws exception. So I'll say throws exception. So we want to check that, right? This is basically what we want to check if we are getting an exception. But this will actually, let me just run it. Let me just run just this, right? But this is, if you look at this, based on the fact that we are calling this get user, right? We are always getting a user, right? We are always getting a user. So this test actually should fail. So let me run this. So you can see this test should what fail, right? So it says expected an instance of exception, which is what we expected here, right? But the actual thing it got is that it got an instance of a user, right? It got an instance. And that's because as far as we are calling this function, it is always giving us a value, because now, assuming I decide to do something like this, to play around with the URL, right? Where is it? Okay. Assuming I just play around with the URL, right? Now that URL is actually what's it called? Of course, like, it doesn't point to anything, so you shouldn't be able to what's it called? You shouldn't be able to even give you a response, because it can't even hit that. That's not even an actual will I say endpoint, right? So did I click run? Okay. So yeah, so it gives us an exception so it throws exception, right? It gives us the exception we're looking for here, but it's not actually the correct thing, because if you check, we are, you can see where the error, this is occurred, right? Line 13, right? When we are calling, so it throws this particular guy, but the issue here is the URL, right? That's where the issue is, the URL. So So that's actually that. So, but we need to be able to properly test this, right? So let me send this back to how it was, right? So basically that it throws an error. And the reason is because we are always, like I said, this will always throw an error. Let's run our test again now that I've put things back. So the first test should pass, and then the second test should fail. Okay, so I'm going to explain what we can do in situations like this. Because when we tested it, the second function, which is the one that checks that the status code is not 200, the one that checks that the status code is not 200, right? What happens is this: it always gives us an exception because the call to fetch the users always works. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. So
It was a bit choppy.
okay. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. So what we're going to do, right? Because this is not a problem, right? When we switch to using a wrong URL, we get the tests fail, right? But that's not really kind of like the exception we're looking for. So, but this is the problem. The problem is this: we are not able to control the behavior of this http.get method, right? We are not able to control it. Once you hit its endpoint, once the status code is 200, it gives you a response, right? So we're not able to control the behavior of the http.get method. So we can't decide, what the status code should be, right? So one thing you will notice is this: when we run this code, you can do that. I can't test that here. You can try that on your own. When you run it without internet connection, all your tests will fail. If I turn off internet connection, the call will end. So you can test that, on your own, right? But you'll notice that when you turn off your internet connection, all your tests will fail because it cannot actually access that URL. But your tests, they didn't actually fail. It's just that there was no connection, right? So one thing you should learn when it comes to testing is that your test should not depend on an external factor, right? Your test should not depend on an external factor. It should be done in isolation, right? So to solve this issue, right, of dependency, because right now our test is dependent on this URL. We can't control the behavior. We don't have any control over it, right? So to solve this, we are going to mock this http.get. We are going to mock it, right? Think of mocking as you're trying to kind of like, just think of it as creating an instance of it and modifying it in your own way so you can have control. So we're going to mock it, right? Now, there are two packages you can actually use for mocking. Yeah, for mocking. We have mocktail and we have Mockito. You probably must have heard of it somewhere, somehow, right? So we have Mockito and Mocktail. Now, both of them do the same tag, just that Mockito actually works with code generation, but Mocktail works with you actually mocking the classes, right? You actually mocking the classes. And to mock a class basically just means, you're creating, and just think of it like you're trying to create an instance, right? Someone says Mockito sounds like Monkey Tail. So think of it, you're trying to create an instance, you're extending from it such that you can implement it in your own way. You can have control of what, the functions and everything actually what to do. Okay. So now our user repository class is dependent on this HTTP plugin, right? This our HTTP, right? Is dependent on it full time, right? So this means that this our get user function is dependent on an external plugin or package, which is this HTTP package. So whenever you have external dependencies, you need to find a way to control it. That's the only way you can actually really do tests, right? You need to find a way you can control it. So what we'll actually do is we are going to mock this class, the HTTP class, and we're going to do dependency injection, right? So basically, it's just like we're going to take the HTTP plugin and inject it in the user repository, right? So that we can have a bit of control. So two things, mocking and dependency injection. So what that means is in our user repository class, now going to do something like this. I'll say HTTP dot client. I want to get the client, right? I'm just creating a client instance or variable, right? Variable, and then I'm just going to inject it, right? I'm just going to pass it into this as a constructor. So I'll say this dot client, this dot client, right? So instead of saying await HTTP, I'm just going to now use client dot get, right? Now, of course, this is going to throw an error, because remember we're just calling, what's it called? User repository. So in our main here, so I'm actually just going to pass it. I'm just going to pass in clients, right? I'm just going to pass in clients here. Okay. Now, so let's head back, right? So basically what I'm just doing is I'm injecting clients wherever I'm calling user repository, I'm injecting the clients there, right? So with this now, right, we can now pass a client in our user repository class in the test file. But we're not actually going to pass an actual client, but we'll pass a mock client. We're going to mock the client so that we can manipulate it, right? So we're going to use Mockito for that. I know the name sounds funny, but just hold the laughter. So what you need to do first of all is that you need to get the dependency, right? Now it's a dev dependency. That's one thing to know. It's a dev dependency. So this is it here, Mockito, right? A dev dependency. So you need to get this this is actually the current version, right? So put it in your dev dependencies because of course we do not want to run tests on your application. Actually, when users are using your apps, you don't want to be running tests. So this is just for the developer, right? Being you. Okay. So yeah, so let's do this. So first of all, I'm going to do some stuff now. So I hope you are ready. So I'm going to create a class up here. I'm going to call it, so sorry, we're using mocktail. Sorry, mocktail. So I'm going to create a class called mock HTTP client. Now, the only reason I'm using mock HTTP client is because I would have used mock client, but there is already a class that exists called mock client. So to avoid naming issues, so I'm just going to say mock HTTP client. And I want it to implement client, right? Remember, we're trying to mock the client. So let me make it implement what clients. Now, this actually, right, will help us to mock the client. But this is it. This is where the problem is. You can see we have missing concrete implementations of clients.close. There's clients.delete. Now, this actually gives us a bit of, there's clients.get for us to decide to manipulate the get method the way we want. But using this, I have to create 10 missing variables, right? And start writing code for each of them. But so I don't want to do this, right? I don't want to actually want to do this. So this is where mocktail comes in to mock the class by extending it, right? So this is where it comes in. So instead of this, I'm now going to say that my mock HTTP client extends extends mock, yeah, which then implements what client. So with this now, I can now have access to, kind of do some stuff. So by extending this mock class, right? By extending, so this is a mock class, it implements all the fields and methods with default implementation and does not throw anything, so it can be customized. So by extending this mock class, we now have access to the properties of the client class. Okay, so we are basically just now going to pass the mock HTTP client class into the user repository, our user repository. But let's, before we, instead of just passing it in, let's make it let's kind of make it global. So I'm going to say let's mock HTTP client, sorry. And then I'm going to do it here, just so mock HTTP client is equal to mock HTTP client. So then I'll pass in our client here. Okay, so this is just the basic setup, right? So now what we can now do is to give this mock client a behavior. Now we have extended it. So let's give it a behavior. This called what's the name? This is called stubbing. Yes, stubbing. I think STUBBING, or I think it's one or two B's, but it's called stubbing, right? So this is you giving a behavior to our mock client. So let's now work this out. So we're going to now update. I'm going to update this test right now. Okay, so instead of the whole final user and everything before that, right? Before that, let's now mock this guy, this whole process, right? Let's now mock this because we don't want to use this implementation. This implementation will always fetch data. So we don't have control. We can't decide what the status code is to be sure that, okay, maybe if there's a 400, let this particular error show. If there's a 500, let this particular and all those stuff. So let's now, do something. So I'm going to say, sorry, this actually should be arranged. So arrange. So let's arrange stuff. So this is what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to start by saying when, okay, let's see. I think the when I actually want to use is okay. Passing a function here. Okay, so when our mock HTTP client, right, dot get, so you can see now we have access to the get method, right? So I'm now just going to, let me get this URI.pass. Right? So URL.pass and everything. So then, so when this happens, right? Let me be sure I'm getting the, I need to actually indent stuff. Okay. So when this, yeah, let me just bring things down so that's, okay. So when we have actually mocked this, we want to now, so I'll use a dot, then what do we want to do? So when we get the when we run our get method, right, then we want not just then, we want to decide how it would give us feedback. So I'll say, hold on, I think I have deleted twice. Okay. Okay, so I think let's see if it is here. Yes, so then we want to give an answer, right? So we want to return, the answer there should be to return a response. So you see how we are now controlling, what we want. So we want to return what? A response. So for the response, let me just get this, right? Let me show you. So I'm just going to get this. I want to get this exact response, right? So I'm just going to copy this. Okay, sorry about that. So now I'm going to use, I'm sure you must have seen this. So I'm just going to paste this guy. I know it seems like a long listen. So here we are doing the first test. So we are expecting a 200, right? We are expecting a 200. So let me kind of push this in a bit. Okay, so yeah, we're expecting a response of 200 now, but we need to, because we are actually using this, we're using our weights here, so need to make this an async, right? So okay, it's a user. Okay, good. So I think I'm making passing too many stuff here, so let me check. Mock clients, mock http client.get URI.parse. Okay, David, do you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yeah, my question right now, if we look at it, we have so many embedded callbacks, more like different
yeah.
functions. Is there a
Okay.
possibility for us to create a named function instead for each of these being called at each point?
Sorry,
Like
come
just
again.
create functions for them, like individual functions for each. Like at the point of the first one where the pass was made, a separate
Yeah.
function,
Okay.
then
Yeah, you can
like
do all,
just
you
define
can you can
process
do
for
all
it, or
that.
like
You can do all
okay,
that, but I'm focused
okay,
more on just making you guys understand,
okay,
how it's
okay,
actually done. Yeah, the whole abstraction and kind of doing functions, that one is up to you. Okay, so I think I see the issue I have, right? Using and that's the thing about coding, right? I'm using capital letter for this. So this should actually be a small when. Okay, so this is it. So what we have basically done is with our mock clients now, we are now mocking this. So we are still we are still using this URL, but we are now in control of what, the response and the status code. So let's run this test to be sure that at least before we knew the first test was passing. So let's actually just make sure that, it's still passing. If it's not, then we now, try to fix whatever issue that we are having. So let's see. Let me run that. Okay, yeah. Okay. So yeah. So let's run that. So while that is running, let's see. Okay, so the first our first, let me close this out. So our first test actually was passed. So we are good. Okay. So we're going to now do the same thing, right? We're going to do the same thing. So this just helps us confirm that we actually now have a what's it called? Like the call to get user is actually returning a user. Okay. Now, so let's do the second test, right? So like I said, this is supposed to be arrange. Okay. So we're going to still do the same thing. Okay. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to say when yeah. So when the mock HTTP client dot get, so just get this back. Okay, so expect to find a, okay, I think it should be here. Oh, okay, we'll fix that. All right. So let me just bring this down. So we now have this. I hope I've not deleted something. Okay, so we pass this, then let's bring this down. Let me just bring this down also. So what do we now need to do? We now need to actually check, right? So dot then answer. So for this, we can just, I can just say response, but of course it should be async. Okay, so let me take that out. Don't worry, let me just response. And then for the body, I can actually just give this status code. So let's say 500, right? So I think, okay, so I think I'm missing a particular, I must have closed out, deleted something. So let me just, sorry, let's just, I don't want to have to start doing too much and finding the time. Okay, so I think I can just get from here. Let me just get this. Let me get from the when down to this async. I think that should end here. Okay. So, okay. Yeah. Mm, okay. So, hold on. I need to be sure that when, okay. Need to be sure I'm actually not, seems I'm pasting stuff with an extra, need to find the scope. So just give me a let's see. So, okay, it could probably, okay, hello, please confirm you can hear me.
Yes,
Okay,
I
I
can
can
hear
hear
you.
out. Okay, so where did you lose me?
Okay,
Hello?
you were trying to fix
Yeah,
the when that
yeah, the whole
where
code
you
there.
copied. Yes. For the
Okay.
second test that you were about to do.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think someone saw it. I actually didn't even check the chat. But well, I'm already I'm kind of just still putting it back together. So it's fine. It's fine. So yeah, let's just do things this way so that after this, break this down. Okay, so and then we have dot then answer, right? And then so what I just want to do is to get a response, right? Now, my response doesn't actually, I actually I don't need to actually pass in anything. This should be 500. So I'm going to make this an async, right? And then I think that's, so we're not going to need this guy here. So let me just be sure that, so I expected to find this. Where are you expecting it? Okay, I already have this here. So where are you expecting it to? Okay, so hold on. Sorry, the return type for the response is not, okay, so yeah. So we have this error, said the return type isn't a future, right? So, hold on, so we can actually do a future dot delayed, right? That's one thing we can do, but I actually don't want to do that. So let's start from this test. We have, where's the second test? Okay, so we have this and this and async. Okay, so when we have this, okay, dot then answer, okay, okay. Oh, okay. I think I was putting the async in the wrong place. Yeah, sorry about that. Collins, your hand is raised.
Sorry, that's the one
Okay, okay. That's what we wanted to point out. Sorry, it is breaking from my end.
Yeah, it's a bad network from here too. I can't hear him well.
Okay,
the
okay, fine.
async was
Okay.
yeah.
So I think he's basically trying to say that's what he wanted to point out. So I was actually putting the async at the wrong place. It's supposed to be before this. So yeah. So what we are basically just doing now is, so we are basically just, of course, we have mocked this, right? Now we don't necessarily need this. What we want to manipulate. Now remember, of course, it's possible for you to have an empty listen. What we want to manipulate is the status code, which we can now manipulate it now. So so now let's run this test and see. So let's run, run, and then so let's see. Okay, I think it's still running. So apologies, yeah. So our tests actually now pass. So this actually throws an exception, right? It actually throws an exception. Okay, so let's look at another test case, right? Another thing we can actually test. Interestingly, you can actually test the model class, right? We can test just to ensure that the user model can be correctly serialized and deserialized from JSON, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new group. So I'm going to create a new group, right? So let me create a new group, and I'm going to call this group user model. Let's use uppercase user model, right? Okay, let's just add this there. So we basically just want to check that, it's currently, it's serialized and deserialized from JSON. So how can we actually do that? So let's create our test. So the test case is we want to check from JSON. We want to see if it goes from JSON, if from JSON creates a valid user. We want to be sure because we have in our get user, right? When the response is do, what does it do? It's what this user dot from JSON is what called the response. So we want to show that it creates a valid what user, right? That's what we are testing for. Okay. So how do we do that? So let's see. First of all, let's get a JSON string, right? I'm going to just pick this up. Let me get this just without the status code, right? Okay, hold on. Let me get this. So let me create a JSON string. I'll just call this JSON string. So I can reuse this. So supposed to put this here. Now, we don't need some of these guys, like we don't need company, because if you check, let's look at this. Let's just from our user model here just takes email, name, ID, website. So let's take out company, let's take out phone. We actually don't need that. Let's take out address. Okay, so I think this is actually okay. So well, we are being advised to use const. So well, that's also fine. Let's see what that does. So we have a JSON string now. So let's test that. So I'm going to say final user is equal to user dot from JSON, right? And then I'm going to pass in my JSON string. So want to just be sure, right? This is just part of testing, right? So what do we want to do? We want to now expect, okay? So we expect that, let's say user.id. So because if it's actually what, if it creates a valid user, then the ID of that user should be 1. So I can say user.id, and then let's check that it actually gives us what 1, right? So let me run this group because we don't actually need an instance of listen. So I can actually just run just this group or run all of them. So let's check that. So while that is so I can just continue to like expect all these things, right? To expect all of them. So let's see. So let's see. So yes, we have an error here at line 7, unexpected character in repository.test or user model. So I think so Okay, yes. So this last, I'm very sure I let's see. So 1, 2, yes. What is this one for? Yeah. Oh, actually also don't need this. Okay, so let's run this group again. Let's run this group again. But I want to have more expect. I want to expect the name to be this. I want to expect the username to be this, the email, and as far as the website, right? I actually want to expect those things. So um hmm, let's see. Okay, so well, it actually passes because there's actually a user that has the ID of 1. So a user that has the ID of 1 was created. You can kind of expect a lot. You can say user dot name, right? So what we should expect is this, right? And then let's say user dot email. Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, so sorry, I think my network kicked me out again. So let me share my screen. Okay, so yeah, we can expect the email. So I'm just gonna get this. All right, so yeah, I'll just run this group and then that actually should be it. Okay, so yeah, that's actually that. So we can have one last test to check that to JSON creates a valid JSON string, right? We can check that to JSON creates a valid JSON string, right? So yeah, our test passes. So let's see. Let's just do, I think that will be the last one. So permit me to just duplicate this. Okay, so permits me to duplicate this. So what we want to now test is what to JSON creates a valid JSON string. So to JSON creates a valid JSON string, right? So how can we actually do this test, right? So we're going to get a user and then call to JSON, and then we'll expect JSON. That's basically what we're going to do. So let's create a user, right? I'm going to leave. Let me bring this down. I'm going to use this. I'll leave this. I'll use it. I'll take it out, but let me just. So let me create a user. Right. So the email, I'm going to take this. The name, Leanne Graham. Then the ID is 1. And then what do we have? Websites is this. Okay, so that's the first thing. We want to create a user because we want to check that, to JSON actually creates that to JSON method, we actually want to check and confirm that it actually creates a valid JSON string. So okay. Sorry, okay, think, yeah. Okay, so yeah, sorry about that. So what we're going to now do is I'm going to now create a JSON string, say final JSON string equals user dot to JSON. Okay, so then what do we want to do? We want to expect that our JSON string, right? This JSON string here is going to match the JSON that we are actually getting, right? Which is this. So that's why I said I was going to delete this. So let me get this, which is this guy. So let me cut this, delete this, delete this. Okay, just take this whole thing out. So this is what we want it to match. So we want to check if, okay, when you give a user, can it convert it to a JSON, right? So we have a user, we have converted the user to JSON because we have a function to do that, right? We've converted the user to JSON, to a JSON string. Now we want to expect that, okay, it was actually what's done, right? So let's run this test and confirm that to JSON creates a valid JSON. Okay, let's see. I think we'll give it a minute or so. No, not up to a minute. So my laptop actually, a lot of things are running on it. So okay, so we have an error. So let's see. Okay, so expected this new line, and it's actually not seeing that. So let's do okay, let me do something. Hold on. So okay, all right. So let's do some debugging right now. So JSON string ID this. So let's say expected new line for this ID. Oh, okay. So interesting. That's interesting. So let's see what we get here. So I'm going to do something. Not that this seems we had some unnecessary space. Let me just clear out. Let me just let me be sure. It seems had some necessary okay, so let's run this again. Let me run this test again. Okay. So, well, but this is basically about testing, right? So while this is running and we are debugging in case any other error comes up, right? So this is about user testing, right? That about it. Of course, there are other things to test. Okay, so we are still having an expected new line somewhere. So let's see. I think I'm probably okay. Collins here, go ahead. New line here.
Okay,
It
sorry, can you
seems
hear me?
yes, I can hear you. It seems I'm having a lot of space somewhere. Yes, go
I,
ahead.
the test is failing
You're breaking.
because the two strings are not equal. Can you hear
Exactly.
me now?
Yeah, yeah. So it's seen
Can you
one.
hear me?
It expected, yes, that's good. That's good, a good one you pointed out there.
Hello?
So if you can see it, expected, yes, I can hear you. I think you're breaking. I think you're
Can
breaking.
you
I don't
hear
know.
me
Is it from
now?
my David? Can you hear me? Yes,
If
I can hear
you
you, Collins. So
It's
what we
Collins
need
I
to
cannot
do,
hear, but I can hear you well.
if
But
you
Collins
want
is breaking
to
seriously.
okay. So
Um, is
looking
it
at
better now?
yes, don't worry, Collins, hold on. Yeah. So from what we have here, it's expected a single, but the actual stuff is double. So this is double. So let's um so please confirm
Network
you can
seems not to
yeah.
be our friends today.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, just to correct the we've corrected the quotes, right? Because what we were passing were single quotes, but we're expecting it to match double quotes, right? So yeah, so let's run and also check. So one of the things, the truth is the bugs are good, right? Bugs are not something you run away from, and sometimes when you're in a hurry, right, you can actually miss out on stuff. So that actually happens. So let's run and just keep fixing the bugs. I hope we don't have any other issue, especially with new line. Yeah, so let's see. I think this thing is trying to do serious matching. So let's just match things exactly the way it should be. So first of all, expected new line, so which is different. So actual email. Okay, so let's really look at, let's compare. We need basically just need to compare these two, right? So I don't know if it is maybe it is, I'm suspecting something. So let's do something. I'm going to take this ID. Let's start with this. Let's make them match the order. Let's make the order match. Let's just start with that. Name, username. Oh, there's no username here. But we have it here. So I'm going to take this out and let's make sure the order is also there just in case. So ID one, name, right? Email, and then the website. Okay, so And then, yeah, so yeah, that's that. So let's test this now. Okay, let's test this quickly. We'll fix any other. So I am still, kind of looking at this new line. Right, yeah, so we still have this issue. There's a new line somewhere. So it expected a new line with ID, or name this, email this, website this, but the actual thing it got was this without any new line. So we need to now check our code. It's expecting this, but it seems it's now reading this new line, right? It's reading this new line, right? So let's take it out. And this is actually very interesting. So let's take out every new line, right? And then let's run this test again. Okay, so, well, that's one. So let's see how close we are. So it seems like this is what is expected, but this is the actual stuff that is coming in. So let's see. Okay. So user, okay, it expected this, but this is what, okay, so I'm just going to clear out this, right, so that we are sure of, because I think all these new lines are really an issue right now, right? So it's expecting this, right? We don't have any new line here. Okay, so let's run this again. Okay, so I think we're getting close. So let's see. I think I've taken out the lines now. So let's see. It expected this name, right? Email, this. But the actual stuff is this, Leanne. Okay. ID one. So let's now, the actual stuff, email, name. We have email, name, email, name, ID, website, which is different. So we need to make sure that it actually matches, right? We need to make sure it actually matches. So remember just like we have here, right? So we need to make sure these matches. So it expected ID was one, but it's actually expecting email to come first. So, okay, so let's see. Okay. So email expected, right? So it expects that this should match this, but the actual stuff it got was, so it expected ID one, name, Leanne Graham, this, but the actual stuff it saw was email. So now this begs the question, why is it getting email first? So we need to think about that. So from what we can see here, we have this expected ID and but the actual stuff is getting is this, right? So if we actually look at we want it to match this, but it's not matching. And the reason is because our user model actually, the order is email, name, ID, and website. So let's see, right? Let's see something. I'm going to test something. So I'm going to change the order here. I'm just going to change the order here, right? So I'm going to cut this. Email, where's our user model? Email, name, ID, website. So email, then name, then ID, then website. Okay. So so in as much as we are passing this, right? So it's I think it's going to still follow up this format, right? It's going to follow up this format. So we need to match it this way. So so yes, let's run our test again. Okay, so yeah, we now have another one. So let's follow up. So email, name, ID, website. Email, name, ID, website. So it's seen a difference here. And this actually looks like space. So this is very, very interesting, right? This is very interesting. So okay, so this is actually very, very interesting. So I want to check something. Okay, so I'm going to come back here. So email with a space here. So we have a space here. So let's see email. Let me click on this exception. So expected email this, and then it found this. It expects one more line, right? That's basically what you're seeing here. So package this and expect. Okay, so um let's get this. Sorry about that. Sorry, let me get this again. So the expected has this, and then the actual does not have any of this. So let me even quickly. So yeah. Okay, so let's see what we are listen. So we have this. So the question is, let's confirm something. I'm just going to take this out, right? Okay, so our actual, which is this, had a, okay, so don't worry, let me get this. So look at, we just took out those this thing, right? But we are still having this. It's saying that this is different, right? Which is different. Expected dot dot d before the z, expected name. So we still have this offset, right? We still have this offset. So we just need to make things match. That's all. We kind of need to just make things match. So let's do something, right? We'll take out all these spaces, right? Let's take out all these spaces. Let's take out all these spaces, right? And this is actually going to, yeah, so let's run this now. So we're taking out the actual space. Now there's one more thing, but let's just run this. Let's just run this. let's just run this. Okay, and our test actually what passes. So, what this actually tells us is you have to be very meticulous, right? You may put a space can just ruin, ruin your code, and you're fighting up and down. So that's why you see tests are important. So it's possible that, and this will actually help you, because consider maybe you're in a hurry, you just copied your code somewhere and then you just pasted, and probably in the process of typing, you added an extra space that did not feel like anything was wrong, but you understand you now have issues when creating a valid JSON string, right? So this is where tests actually what excels, right? Where unit testing actually just helps you to solve problems, right? So yeah, this is it, and this is where we're going to wrap it off, right? So I'm going to give you guys a task to do, and I'll communicate that to you, okay, on the Discord. So I want to say thank you very much, and let's have a productive weekend. Thank you.